well to steal Manu's placed transition there from one team who sometimes bottles it against Bayern to a team that almost always bottle against Bayern, Dortmund, who in a kind of roundabout way kind of did poorly, then did really well, then did poorly all over again, and they're through to 3-2 defeat to Hoffenheim. Guys, I didn't catch this game. I plan to watch it after we record here because I'm doing my newsletter on Dortmund this week. But what was the kind of... This gets one thing straight, because I think this is context is needed for this result, this performance, and Hoffenheim's opening goal. Matt, maybe you could explain this if you want, or either one of you jump in. Mats Hummels was not included in the matchday squad. Then we saw reports that he was driving to the game on his own, so not taking. So usually these teams travel to these games on a coach. They usually stay in, I think, I'm not sure if this is the case with Dortmund at home games, but they usually stay in a hotel beforehand, the night before, so the club can keep an eye on the players. They all go to the matches together. Mats Hummels wasn't there for any of that. He obviously wasn't deemed suitable to start the game. Emre Can starts at centre half, and Hoffenheim's opening goal is an interception made when Emre Can tries to pass the ball across the Dortmund goal, and Bebu latches onto it and scores a goal. Who wants to kind of jump in there and maybe explain what the hell is going on there?
I just think it's so much of it's like Groundhog Day watching them. I mean, that that build up, or attempted build up to play out from the back between Emre Can and Schlotterbeck was reminiscent of the goal that they gave away against Bochum. Again, trying to play out from the back and completely caught. That ended up in a Schlotterbeck own goal. This ended up with Bebu firing into the top corner. So yeah, Groundhog Day from that point of view. And then at the other end of the pitch, Groundhog Day in that they simply couldn't create anything. That was despite having Brandt back. It says a lot that the two goals they did score actually came from set pieces, which I think is quite un-Dortmund like. It's just not even like the two goals they scored were really were sort of like well created chances with good build, or where you could see clearly what the patterns were. That's all still lacking. I feel like I was missing a little bit. I admittedly only saw the second half, and I did see a few people, including yourself, Stefan, saying that that in that first half, particularly apparently there was a 20-minute period where Dortmund were really, really good and could have scored 2 or 3. It certainly wasn't the 20, 30, 40 minutes that I saw in the second half. So yeah, I've no idea what happened at half time, because that certainly wasn't what I saw. I just thought
that was Manu.
Speaking
actually, that was Manu who put that in the group chat, because I didn't catch the game. So maybe I should have went to you first, Manu, since you're the guy who watched this game live from start to finish. What did you make of the game?
I am still baffled on how Dortmund gave this game away. As stupid as they were, and there's no other way of putting it. I'm not being polite here, because they don't deserve to be polite, but they were stupid to give away that first goal. And then I thought their reaction was really good. They made it 1-1, they made it 2-1. And then there was a moment where I thought, okay, they're going to make it 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. They're going to just, it was one of those Dortmund moments where the stadium really comes alive and they really start to press. And then all of a sudden it was like a collective, oh, we've won. Let's take the foot off the gas and just pass the ball around and be conservative. And I'm like, what's going on here? This Hoffenheim team was so dead. Like, this could have been a horrible night for them at the Westfalenstadion. Like, it could have been really, really, really bad. And
Manu, could I actually jump in there for a minute before we move on? Just from that second goal, Nico Schlotterbeck scores the header, and he celebrates by clenching his bicep and pointing to it in front of the yellow wall. And I mean, I'm not a Dortmund fan. I don't go to the games. And to be perfectly honest with you, I find their misery quite entertaining. But if I was a Dortmund fan, watching not just any Dortmund player this season, but that player in particular, who perhaps more than anyone else in that team has not lived up to expectation, score a goal like that and then march off to the stand and, flex his bicep as if he was Cristiano Ronaldo, that would have just drove me insane. And
it's
then
It's Stefan Kunz celebration, no? The bicep.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I also wonder. I don't know, but I wonder if it's a reference to Niklas Füllkrug. He's been doing that, I think, quite a bit.
But he got it from Kunz, I think.
Yeah. So maybe it's some sort of internal joke that we're all missing, and clearly the joke.
We were literally missing it because
the joke is ultimately on Nico Schlotterbeck, because I think he's at fault in the build up to the Hoffenheim's third goal as well when they're trying to build up, and I mean then again that's all the catalogue of errors. They're trying to play out the back again, and it's gone wrong again. Ian Martson, who I think has been absolutely fantastic since this idea, but he's found himself far too far out the pitch, which means that Schlotterbeck's ended up trying to begin the build-up play from left back, and when it all goes wrong, it means there's nobody at centre back, and Hoffenheim are able to just walk through.
I mean, I tried to make this point, but they shouldn't even be in this situation in the second half.
No, they shouldn't.
This game should have kicked off the second 45 minutes with Dortmund being up 4-1. You know, like they had that momentum to really put a really poor Hoffenheim side to the sword, and it didn't. And we were going to talk probably about the substitutions as well, but you're seeing a Dortmund side here. When Dortmund were at their best and a team was on their back foot, what would they do? They would absolutely crush that team, right? They would absolutely crush that team. And for whatever reason, this team was taught to take the foot off the gas pedal and be conservative and pass the ball around in a way that maybe a Man City or Bayern Munich do when Bayern Munich were at their best, right? You know what I mean? Like, you got the second goal and let's be patient and get the third and then the fourth. They don't have that ability. And if they have a head coach who thinks that the team has that ability, that is out of touch in reality.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. You hit your nail on the head there when you say there's this kind of weird kind of debate over, well, maybe it's not a debate, but it's the kind of, there's only two options here. Either the head coach isn't good enough, the players aren't good enough, and it does kind of lead into these kind of, well, yeah, and you're right, it can be both, absolutely, and it almost certainly is. But Matt, let me throw this to you. I've kind of got, I tweeted about this actually last night. I deleted the tweet because it was a little inaccurate, and I'll explain why in a moment. But Dortmund go away to Wolfsburg. Füllkrug scores in the 8th minute. Wolfsburg equalise in the 64th minute. In 79th minute, Terzic takes off Royce, Sancho, and then Füllkrug comes off, and he brings on Bino Gittins, Moukoko, and Ozcan. 3 strikers off, 2 on. He then goes to PSV, a game that technically you would think Dortmund should be competitive in. They again score an opening goal. They then concede a late one. Not a late one, sorry. They concede an equaliser after the half-time. He takes Royce off for Brandt. He takes Sancho off for Wolf. Takes Daniel Malin off for Ozcan. And then again replaces Füllkrug with Moukoko. In that situation, he took 4 forwards off and brought 2 on. And in this match, he brings off Füllkrug, Sancho, and Maatsen. As you mentioned, Maatsen probably one of Dortmund's best attacking players. And at the very least, he replaces him with 3 actual other forwards in Moukoko, Bino Gittins, and Adeyemi. But in each instance, it feels like rather than kind of carefully tweaking his team, Terzic kind of treats substitutions. It reminds me of like American football when they swap from offense to defense, and he just kind of hails on like 20 new players, like, right, you guys go have some fun with it. And it's almost like he just presses the reset button when things aren't working well and just kind of think, right, you guys go figure it out and see if you can, if just the sheer body count of new faces might kind of shock the opponents into letting us try and win this game.
Yeah, no, that's precisely it. And I mean, it's happening so often now. It's yet another of the Groundhog Day phenomena around Borussia Dortmund. It's less swapping like offensive players for defensive players or switching from attack to defense. It's more just, it literally is like for like. Replace like for like, and with the best will in the world, I simply can't detect what more there is to it than that. And I think we've said enough, I've repeated it on loads of occasions, that it does sometimes work for them, especially because the calibre of player that you're bringing on, the likes of, this time it was Adeyemi, it was Moukoko, Jamie Bino Gittins. They are absolutely players who can have an effect off the bench or who can have individual flashes. I can think of Adeyemi down the left wing away at Frankfurt, Mokoku on loads of occasions off the bench, Bino Gittens away at Darmstadt. And this was the case last year as well. I think Bino Gittens a few times off the bench. These players do have impact, but it really is getting... The evidence is stacking up now. They're having impact purely through the nature of them just simply being new legs. Fresh legs. There's no particular change to the system, and the worst example of this was when they looked at their most desperate on the final day against Mainz last season, where they sort of just threw on Julien Duranville, who hadn't played off these, and it was just like, well, do something, maybe some sort of individual action will come out of the bag. But this time, it wasn't. It wasn't there this time. Sometimes it comes off, but there's no particular plan behind it, and that's becoming increasingly the case. It's not going to get any easier now, because we've sort of been, or at least I've been critical of Borussia Dortmund since the start of the year, despite the wins. I think at one point they had 3 or 4 wins on the bounce, or unbeaten, and only conceded 1 goal. They'd caught up with RB, they'd overtook them and got into 4th place. But the performances weren't good, and everyone could see the performances were particularly good. But now it's going to get even harder for them, because they've not even got easy fixtures now, because they were wins against Cologne, against Darmstadt, against whatever, with all due respect. But now you've got just the next sort of 6 Bundesliga games. This is without even thinking about PSV. But the next 6 Bundesliga games: Frankfurt, Bayern, Stuttgart, Gladbach, Leverkusen, RB. This is going to be really, really, really tough for Dortmund to
watch
get to
them though beat
Champions League.
Bayern in a year where they don't need to win this game.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, perhaps.
Well,
Manu, completely off.
Manu, let me ask you this, but so we can maybe put a cap on this Dortmund game, because you would expect them to probably get past PSV since it's a draw. They take a draw to the Westfalenstadion. But looking at that kind of run of fixtures, do you think Terzic will still be the head coach by the end of the season?
So I made 2 mistakes yesterday. One was that I went on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. And my second was that I looked up BVB and Edin Terzic. And going based on that platform's reaction of people who are Dortmund fans, I think it would be really tough to continue with Edin Terzic. But there is no way that Hans-Joachim Watzke is going to change the course. Anyone who's followed Hans-Joachim Watzke in recent months, and the way he's sort of mapped this out for Borussia Dortmund, I think they programmed in a course, and if that course leads straight into the midst of the sun, so be it. They're going to stay to the course no matter what, and I don't see a coaching change here. I mean, Matt, maybe you feel different about this, but I get the sense this is a club led by a person who is unwilling to make any change at the moment.
No, I tend to agree. I don't think there will. But I don't think there'll be a coaching change before the end of the season. I absolutely think there will be one in the summer. I think that's nailed on. I can't see it, and especially if they don't get Champions League. And I think that is looking increasingly unlikely now. It's not like at Bayern where Champions League exit would absolutely accelerate the firing of the coach. I think we said last time that I suspect, I don't know, but I can imagine a possibility even at Bayern Munich that even though Tuchel has been, it's now all been done and dusted. They said he'll be there at the end of the season, then he's going. If they were to get knocked out by Lazio, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought that forward and they said, right, you got now, because that's literally the only reason he's still there. As for Dortmund, we sort of joked before. I said Dortmund can actually beat anyone on their day at home, and you said apart from Hoffenheim. so anyone good, or perhaps even or Heidenheim. Did we make this joke at the start of the season that Dortmund struggle against teams that begin with H and end in Heim? So, but you wouldn't be surprised if they beat PSV at home. I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest. Daniel Mahler was fantastic in the first leg.
And the Champions League performances have been good this year.
They really have been. And then with a little bit of luck, you get a manageable opposition in the quarter. Lazio in the quarters. And then who knows? I mean, genuinely, would it be a massive, massive shock to see this Dortmund team suddenly in the semi-finals of the Champions League.
And who knows what happens after that?
Yeah, worse things have happened. But if they were to get beat by PSV, I don't know if they would pull the plug. I think they would still persevere with Terzic to try and get Champions League again via the league, which I don't think they will now because of the fixture list. I think it'd be too tough for them. And then they're going to be in the same situation in summer that Bayern Munich are in right now for the second time, and it'll be all change, big transition, complete restart at Borussia Dortmund, new CEO, potentially new sporting director, movements within the hierarchy, players out, players in, new head coach, and we'll go from there.
Well, the only thing that made me pause was the fact that I learned that Edin Terzic is on €3.5 million a season. That is a staggering amount of money for a head coach at Borussia Dortmund. And that, I mean, I wish I was at 3.5 million this season. But I mean, that comes also with the conservative Geschäftsmann Watzke, the conservative businessman Watzke may even consider that as a bit rich for a team that misses out on a top 4 spot.
But it does kind of feel like all the stars are still kind of aligning for Terzic at the moment, in the sense that there's no one really interested seemingly in breaking into that top 4 this season except for Stuttgart. Frankfurt, Werder Bremen, obviously Bremen have done well to get back up there, but Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Gladbach, Union Berlin, these are all teams that would have been pushing. Hoffenheim as well, of course, up until this weekend's result.
And
these
top
are all
5
teams
might be enough. And the top 5 might be enough, right?
That was my next point. That first point is that all these teams who were pushing for kind of not top 4 per se, but like putting pressure on the top 4 last season have all fallen off. Dortmund could finish 5th and still get the Champions League. And unlike a Tuchel who could lose in the Champions League and then Bayern would say that's enough's enough, you could quite easily see Edin Terzic just kind of embracing this kind of farewell tour at the end of the season and having these heartfelt moments with a yellow wall, because he's a fan, and because at the end of the day the fans obviously still appreciate him and love him and for what he is, and that's fair enough. But that means that it's not like just sacking a Marco Rose or someone and saying, right, you've not done your job, thanks but no thanks. With Terzic, you can understand them saying, well, if we finish 5th and get Champions League, we might as well let him stay and say his goodbyes and things. And I think that probably would sum up the kind of malaise at Dortmund quite well, to be honest with you.
Two more remarks about that game. First of all, because you mentioned standing ovations in front of the yellow wall and all that. A lot has been made in the German media about the whistles at full time in Dortmund. It is quite unusual. Definitely a contrast to the final league against Mainz, when you would have thought that was the absolute catastrophe that took place, and there were no whistles to be heard. There were loud whistles this time, although I thought it was quite telling. And I say this completely neutrally, and read into it what you will. But when you could hear all the whistles, the camera was panning straight onto the centre of the yellow wall, where it was quite obvious that it wasn't the sort of 500-600 ultras whistling. They were all clapping, doing some sort of clapping, whatever they do. So I just find it interesting sometimes at the different responses of, I suppose, different types of fans, and people have different perspectives on it, that there were absolutely loud whistles from all over the stadium, but quite clearly not from that particularly hardcore group. So that was one observation I thought at the end, and maybe it just maybe that would end up saving Terzic's job, that sort of reaction. I don't know. And the other one, just quickly on Hoffenheim, Manu, you slagged them off quite a lot. They should have been battered in this game, but all credit to Max Bayer, who has been absolutely brilliant. He's been brilliant to watch all season.
I said they should have been battered in the first half.
In the first half, fair enough. But Maxi Bayer was again absolutely fantastic. Gets obviously a massive bit of luck with his shot, which deflects in. I'm pretty sure that shot's going towards the corner flag than going to the back of the net, but it's gone in there, so fair enough. And he's the only, I just checked Kicker's match ratings for the game, he's the only Hoffenheim player that ranks above or beneath 2. Kicker ratings are, number 1 is 1 out of 6 is good, 6 out of 6 is terrible. Every Hoffenheim player is around about 4 out of 6, so all bad. apart from Maxi Bayet at 1.5, man of the match.